Prologue. It's early in the 21st century. The end of 2012 and beginning of 2013 were cold as hell, which got me thinking about our decision to move to Concord, New Hampshire in the first place, granite or not. As it turns out, I didn't have nearly as much control as I had imagined over whether or not it would be our permanent home, but more about that later. This is just an intro here. If you followed our chronicles, you already know that rats and zombies rule most of the streets in the world, and you've probably guessed that it's something my friends and I intend to do our little part to put a stop to, at least in the good old USA. I'm Flex Sheridan. In another few months, my wife Jem is set to have a baby, the firstborn that I know of since all this began. The doctors say everything looks fine. Okay, the doctor. There's only one now. We had another, but he's dead. If you read Hemp and Charlie's Chronicles, then you know how that happened. The rats. Back to the baby news, and allow me to qualify what I said about this being the first birth since the apocalypse. This will be the first live birth. Another baby was almost born in Concord, but there was a problem. One that Hemp always warned was a possibility. The mother didn't survive, and we had to put her little one out of its misery, too. Charlie did the deed. Jem would have, had she not been incapacitated. So with Jem out of the picture, Charlie was the only one with the balls to do the necessary work, ironic as that shit is. This particular problem falls into the category of fucked up things to expect when you're expecting. The worry? Well, that your baby will metamorphose into a zombie inside your womb and begin to eat you from the inside out, of course. Yes, it could be described as the most frightening pregnancy complication ever, especially when you get a glimpse of the thing that was eating Mom. Not cute. Not anymore. Hard to tell if it ever was. It started with the gas. Well, it all started with the fucking gas, but that's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about the vapor, the zombie knockout vapor. The vapor presented as gas. Only thing is, it's pink. So when a woman starts putting out pink belches and farts, you should really start to worry. And I'm not making light of this. I'm just telling you about it. You should know about it because if you're lucky, if we're all very fucking lucky, either you or someone you know is gonna get pregnant. That's a beautiful thing, because we have to start repopulating this world with living, breathing people. Less than a year ago, I never would have believed that I'd meant that in the literal sense. Anyway, there is no way to make light of this. You can tell someone about it and they might get a chuckle at first, but once that someone realizes that the woman who experienced this is dead, they might wipe that smile off their face. Her name was Jennifer Rockford. She was just 22 years old, and she was about the most naturally pretty girl you ever saw, both inside and out. Not a lick of makeup, and shone like a jewel when she walked in the room. She had blonde hair, just about to her shoulders, and only smiled with her mouth closed. She had beautiful teeth, but they didn't need to be a part of that smile in order to let you think she was really happy, and happy to see you. Jem loved her. Charlie and Hemp did too, and our Trina really did. Jennifer was playful with her. I think Jen dreamed that her baby would be a girl, that she would be like Trina. Wow, fucking wrong on both counts. It was, and I mean was, a male child. One day, Jem and I were playing pool, and Hemp and Charlie were working on Hemp's new lab, which is better than the one he had at Carville's, not by much, but he can come and go as he pleases, which pleases him. Anyway, so there we were, and we were at Three Sisters Bar. Everything is free, but you still gotta be served because the ladies run it. Yeah, you know 'em. Vicky, Victoria, and Kimberly, who now has decided she likes Kim better. Pretty fucking soon it's just gonna be Vic, and Kay. Damn, I get sidetracked. Back to it. So Jem is kicking my ass at pool, working on the 8-ball. She's lining it up in the far corner pocket on a bank shot that I insisted on, when Jen nearly folds forward in her chair, clutching her stomach. Jem dropped her stick on the table and ran to her, kneeling down in front of Jen, her arm on her shoulder. Jen, what's wrong? I, oh my God, screamed Jenny, her bright blue eyes squeezed shut. It feels like the worst cramp I've ever. Oh, crap! Where's the pain? It's right in front, Jim. Does it feel like something's wrong with the baby? What else? Oh my God, something. I'm gonna pass out, I think. Jenny's face had gone white, and she was trying to straighten her back in a sitting position, but there was no way for her to get comfortable in the wooden chair. Come here, baby, said Jim, helping her up. Come over here, up on the table. I took the hint and quickly pushed all the bowls into the pockets. Victoria had already gotten a moving blanket and spread it out as soon as the table was clear. Scooch up on the table and we'll help you lay back, said Jim. Victoria, yell for Kim to bring another moving blanket. Victoria turned to call, but Vicky was already running out of the back, the extra blanket in her arms. What's wrong? Is she okay? She asked, gently lifting Jenny's head and sliding the blanket under. I'll go get Dr. Jim, said Victoria. Get her some water. Kim! Where the hell is Kim? In the bathroom, said Vicky. Give her a minute. And suddenly Jenny started burping. It was as though a valve had opened, and all at once her stomach expanded and contracted, and she expelled a pure cloud of pink vapor. When the first big cloud of vapor escaped Jenny's mouth, Jem had been leaning over her. In seconds, Jem's eyes rolled back, her muscles relaxed, and Vicky ran forward just in time to catch her before she collapsed. Had Vicky not acted quickly, she would have hit the linoleum floor hard. Relieved that Jem wasn't hurt when she fell, I stepped away from Jenny. Jesus fucking Christ! I stared at Vicky, who had taken Jem underneath the arms and pulled her 6 feet away from the table. I shouted, Radio Victoria, and tell her to get him. We need the fucking Watt 6, and we need it now. Vicky pulled the radio from Jem's belt, pushed the button, and yelled, Hemp, do you read? We need you at the bar now. Bring Watt 6. Bring the Watt 6. Watt 6 stands for Walk Among Them 6 Hour. It's something Hemp formulated when he was being held prisoner in Ryan Carville's house. It allows anyone who takes one of the wafers to be automatically invisible to zombies, both the rat and human kind. For a while, at least. Try to get the doc here, I said. Vicky radioed immediately. What's happening to me? Cried Jenny, her body shuddering, her stomach churning and rolling like puppies trapped under a blanket. What's happening to my baby? Tears ran down her face, and it was goddamned horrible, seeing that young woman so frightened. Hang on, Jenny, I said. You're gonna be okay, girl. We got the doc on the way, so try to be calm. I was frightened. I knew what that vapor meant, what it had to mean. That baby had turned. Kim came in then, and I waved her away. I had to keep my distance, too. I'd been no good to her or anyone else in the same condition as Jem. Speaking of my pregnant wife, how's she doing? I asked Vicky, who was sitting on the floor next to her, cradling her head. She's fine, she said, looking up at me, her face filled with worry. But she's out cold. Jenny continued to struggle, alone on the table. We couldn't chance getting any closer. We could do nothing for her now, even as she cried out in pain. Kim started to cry, followed by Vicky. I tried to keep it together, at least on the outside. We needed our damn doctor. That damn doctor is Jim Schofield. An older man, but one who had probably delivered more babies than the entire population of Concord as it stood today. Jen's screaming reached a fever pitch. I watched as she tore at her clothing, pulling the maternity blouse away and exposing her distended, tumultuous stomach. Then it started sinking in. A small spot just below her belly button, maybe 2 inches in diameter. I was fucking horrified. I was glad Jem wasn't awake to witness this. She would never be the same, and neither would I. I don't know how to finish telling you what happened. Don't want to finish. It tore its way out. How those tiny hands and that little toothless mouth did that damage they did. I'll never know. I never want to know. But it came tearing out of Jen's stomach like the fucking alien baby. Jen's face had gone white, and while she was still awake, I saw her dying before my eyes. Her blood leaked out onto the blanket draped over that pool table, and the creature that escaped her womb clawed and struggled, never losing any of its determination, if that's what it could be called. I knew what I had to do. The only compassionate thing I could. Get on that fucking radio and call Hemp again. Call the doctor again too, Vicky. My voice was low, far more calm than I felt. I walked around, trying not to look at the infant monster, and I moved around behind Jen. Her head was about a foot from the end of the table. I leaned forward and put my bare hand over her mouth, pinching her nose. I wasn't killing Jenny Rockford in my mind. I was just moving her along toward peace and away from the horrible pain. I'd seen enough at that point that I knew the rivers of blood that poured from her body left her with too little to recover, not to mention the damage the little monster inside of her had wreaked. Concord didn't have any significant blood supply, and Jenny's fate was sealed the moment the apocalypse hit. Tears ran from my eyes as I felt and saw her chest rise for the last time, and it was then that I released my own breath. I hadn't even realized I'd been holding it. The 6-pound creature had scrambled free of Jen's stomach and rolled onto the table. 3 more minutes passed with that fucking tiny abomination unable to walk, rolling around on the moving blanket. I should have shot it. Charlie ran in with Hemp behind her, and she stopped short, her face aghast. "What the fuck is going on?" she shouted, staring at the horrific scene on the pool table, the creature that wasn't a baby, gnawing on the umbilical cord, making horrible sounds. Hemp answered. "The baby turned," he said simply. "My God." Charlie spoke without taking her eyes off of Jen and the thing beside her body. "It's one of them, isn't it? Is Jen dead? My God, Flex, is Jen dead?" I nodded and felt my lunch and a warm beer coming up. I choked it back. "Kill it, Charlie," I croaked. "Please." Charlie moved fast. She pulled a Glock from her holster, moved to within 3 feet of it, and blasted the infant zombie in the face, flinging it off the table to hang from the cord that once provided it nourishment, tugging Jen's lifeless body sideways. Hemp calmly walked over to Kim, who had gotten another blanket, but stood there dumbfounded with it in her arms. He took it from her, went back to the table, and lifted the dead thing back onto it. His expression grim and serious, he spread open the blanket and laid the creature atop it. From his pocket, he withdrew a knife, reached down and cut the umbilical cord. He placed the tiny creature in the blanket and folded it over 4 times, sealing it in, and removing it, thankfully, from our sight. He turned and looked at us. "I'll be in my lab," he said. "I don't think I need to explain." With that, he walked out. The lab was actually built in a storage room connected to the bar, accessible by a long hallway at the rear. It had primarily been used to store extra equipment for the kitchen, but all of that had been long ago cleared out. Charlie stared after Hemp as he walked away, and I went and knelt beside Jim. 3 light slaps, and she awoke. Turns out the baby vapor isn't as long-lasting as the more mature stuff. Well, fuck if that isn't something, anyway. There's that. Doc Schofield came in and got the shock of his life. We knew Hemp and the doc would want to see what this thing did to Jen, so we got her wrapped up and took her to Hemp's lab. Charlie drove Jim home. She got her out of there before we tended to Jen's body. I didn't want Jim to see any of that horror in her condition. I'll never forget that day. Despite all we've been through, this was a reminder that there were some horrors we hadn't yet faced that were worse than any in our pasts. I've got to stop now. I'll be back. Just recounting it for you was harder than I ever thought it would be.